Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Melanie Dean. I'm a psychologist, a scientist, and a Hay House author of the book, The Hidden Power of Emotions. And you're listening to the Wavemaker podcast, where we explore how your emotions are real energy waves that are more powerful than you think. And so are you. When you learn how to tap the power of your emotions, you can attract everything in life that you want. It's not just positive thinking, it's science, and I will show you how. Hello, I'm Dr. Melanie Dean, and today we're going to talk about forgiveness. Turning forgiveness inside out. That is, living from the inside out. Forgiveness is really about our desire to be free from the suffering of the stabbing pain, the betrayal, the hurt, the sadness, the anger, the bitterness that comes about from somebody having hurt us, from a major loss in our life, from the grief and the anger and the perhaps vengeance, the bitterness that just seems to stay stuck within us. Forgiveness is about our desire to be free from those debilitating emotions. Think about a time in your past when you've desperately wanted to forgive and it felt so hard. I can remember a time. It was long ago, but I remember it very clearly. It was in my business days, and I had a friend. I thought she was a friend, and we became business associates. She went to work for a company that I did business with, and we had a business relationship as well as a friendship. And it turns out that I didn't really know her. I thought I knew her. It turns out she was very much about getting what was important to her, regardless of her integrity, regardless of truth, regardless of how she treated others. So I found that she would say one thing to my face and to the face of other people, and then she would turn around and say something very different to other people. She lied to me, and I felt betrayed. I felt very, very betrayed. Because how could my friend do this to me? It turns out she just had a way of putting herself first, so much so that she did not care or think about her behavior and how it affected others. So she manipulated and maneuvered her way in and would sabotage my projects that I had put forth and the projects of other people in an attempt to make sure she got her way. Well, I was loaded with outrage, betrayal, disappointment, sadness that I've lost a friend, just a whole mixture of feelings, anger and bitterness, and all the dialogue would run around in my head. And I felt very burdened and laden with that for a long time. It was not, those were not comfortable feelings. I had a desire to forgive, and it really did take me a while, and it was part of the process that I will be sharing with you today. Now, imagine that you have perhaps in a very different kind of need to forgive. Perhaps you've been abused, or a loved one in your family has been abused, emotionally abused or physically abused, perhaps even by somebody you know. Now, the emotions that would be roiling around within you, the stabbing pain in your heart, the betrayal, the sense of being violated, the sense of vulnerability and not being safe, the angerness and the bitterness, the hatred, perhaps even vengefulness of wanting the person to get back at the person for the hurt that they have caused you. That is a lot of suffering, a lot of emotions weighing down inside of you. Now, maybe I've experienced this. You have a need to forgive yourself. Not too long ago, actually, I came upon that need for myself. My son was struggling with using substances that were harmful to him. And he now is getting help, thankfully. But I found myself knowing that I had overlooked things that I wish I hadn't overlooked. I didn't know how to help him years ago when I was noticing that there were problems, and I didn't figure out how to help him then. I failed in some of my responsibilities as a parent to him. And so a need of forgiveness for myself for not being the kind of parent that I want to be. So there's a lot of feelings in there: disappointment in myself, sadness, shame, regret, guilt, a lot of feelings in there to process. So our desire for forgiveness is our desire to eliminate the suffering that we are experiencing as a result of the hurt and the pain that either someone else has caused and brought into our life, or that perhaps we are feeling disappointed in ourselves and needing self-forgiveness. Now, Dr. Luskin is a professor at Stanford University, and he heads a research project on forgiveness. And he talks about this process of what most people think forgiveness is about is the focus on the other person, the focus on the person that created the hurt and the pain. And Dr. Luskin calls this putting the enemy, putting your focus on the enemy that is responsible for your suffering. Well, it's a natural reaction for us that we tend to look for an enemy that's responsible for our suffering. But I will offer to you that when you continue to place your focus on the enemy that is outside of yourself as a cause for suffering, you are disconnecting from yourself. And the essence of forgiveness, true forgiveness, is loving yourself, being authentic with yourself, and being able to ease your own suffering and live a more powerful life, live a happier, more powerful life, to be able to truly create what you want in your life instead of being stuck in these emotions and the grief and the sadness and being stuck there. I'm not saying you're not going to feel those emotions, but it's the being stuck there that forgiveness is you're going to get unstuck. So forgiveness is not about the focus on the other person. It's not about the focus on the enemy. Forgiveness is loving yourself and living authentically from the inside out. So what is forgiveness not? Let's look at that. Forgiveness is not just getting over it. It's not pretending. It is not condoning the actions of the other. It is not reconciling with the other. It is not seeking justice. It is not glossing over the way you really feel and shutting and walling it off. That's not forgiveness. Nedra Tawwab, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. She's a famous best-selling author and a therapist. And she calls all of those modes of forgiveness toxic forgiveness. So we're not talking about that. We're not talking about pretending. We're not talking about moving on and condoning and reconciling and somehow getting all okay with it all. We're not talking about toxic forgiveness that doesn't really work for you. That's not real forgiveness. That's kind of like fake forgiveness. What we're talking about is authentically loving yourself, owning yourself, and living your most powerful, happy self from the inside out. That's what we're talking about. So now I'm going to share with you 3 steps for achieving this. And I want you to notice that they are 3 steps. So I want to encourage you not to just do one of the steps and then not do the second and not do the third, because what that is going to do is keep you stuck. And the whole point of being able to forgive is to get unstuck from these emotions that you are suffering from the hurt and the pain and the anger, the outrage, the bitterness, all of that. The point is be able to live a powerful, happy life and not be stuck there. Now, if you've heard some of my previous podcasts, you will know that your emotions are real energy. When you have emotions, your body creates molecules to match those emotions. So you've heard of some of the molecules like adrenaline and serotonin and dopamine. Dopamine's a feel-good molecule. Adrenaline, your body creates when you feel fear. Now, if you stay stuck in the emotions that are difficult and challenging that result from the hurt that you've experienced, if you stay stuck there, your body will continue to make emotion molecules to match that. And over time, over an extended period of time, if you stay with those emotions that mean fear and anxiety and worry and anger, those emotion molecules inside of you, they communicate to the cells in your body, and your cells don't know the difference between you roiling around with anger and bitterness and resentment, the difference between what that danger is, because that's interpreted by the cells in your body as danger. And it doesn't know the difference between that and real physical danger where you need to run and flee and get the heck out of there. So what happens is that the communication to your cells is the same either way, whether it's real danger you have to run and flee, or whether it is the danger of you feeling unsafe, of something terrible having happened to you, and you are feeling very vulnerable, unsafe, angry, bitter, all those emotions. That communicates to the cells in your body that there is danger, and they must prepare the body to be able to flee, run and flee the danger. So that means it pumps less oxygen and blood flow to organs in your body, and that means it pumps more blood flow into the heart and into the muscles so that you can run from the danger, which in small segments is fine. It is what your body does naturally, but it's the long term where that creates disease, because there are organs in your body that are not receiving the oxygen and the blood flow that they need. So if you stay stuck and you perhaps only do one or two of the steps I'm going to give you, then you're going to be setting your body up to continue to receive danger signals, which is going to decrease the healthy functioning in your body. And it will lead to more opportunity for disease in your body. So you really don't want to do that. Not to mention that those emotions, if you stay stuck in them, they don't feel good. And they're not powerful. And then you are staying stuck and continuing to be in a space where likely you are going to be attracting more of the same uncomfortable, negative emotions because you haven't processed them, moved through them, and figured out a way to come to a happy, more powerful place in your life. So this process is about loving yourself, being authentic with yourself, and coming to a happier, more powerful place within you, living from the inside out. So let's dive into the process. So the first step is going to be no surprise, which is actually feel those feelings. Identify your suffering. Figure out, what is it you are truly feeling? Are you feeling anger and bitterness and revenge? Own it if you are. Are you feeling grief and sadness because what you've experienced means a change in the relationship? Like for me, when I owned my feelings about disappointment and sadness that my friend, that I thought was my friend, business associate, now I was grieving the loss of that friendship. I really disappointed. So I had to own that too. In addition to being incredulous that she would do that she could be so outright and blatantly dishonest and lie and kind of backstabbing. And in addition to my anger at that, my, now mistrust of her, I had to identify all that. So you just need to own it and label it, and to the full extent, identify it. So if you've been abused by a family member that should love you, that should have your best interest at heart, that should be in a place where they look out for you as a family member, and they're not. They've been perhaps emotionally cruel to you. Maybe they've said things to you where you're implying your feelings are not okay, or even said they're not okay, or you're not okay, or labeled or blamed you for being a bad person. Emotional abuse, we would call that. Or physical abuse, where somebody has actually lashed out physically and harmed you. Or perhaps they've harmed a loved one. And this is a family member. This is somebody you know. Your outrage is through the roof. You own that. Own the magnitude of your anger and the magnitude of your outrage, even if you're having feelings of revenge or vengefulness, you want them to pay. Own it. Label it. Be authentic with yourself about that. If, for example, it's a little more tender, like maybe with myself, and I'm needing to forgive myself around not being the best parent that I wanted to be for my son, and I'm disappointed in myself. I really regret the lack of awareness. I regret glossing over things I shouldn't have glossed over. I feel ashamed as a parent for not all of my parenting, but for that portion, I feel like I failed him and I was not my best self, and I regret that. So that is owning it, labeling it, and coming to peace that that is what I'm feeling. Now, if you are having to do a lot of processing of emotions that are difficult, they're deep, they're layered, give yourself some time. So perhaps set a timer and limit your time so that you don't overwhelm yourself, so that you're not asking yourself to deal with all of it at once. You will notice that you will be repeating these steps every time you are feeling a memory or a twinge or all those feelings again from the recollection of the hurt and the pain that you suffered. So these are going to be steps you're going to repeat. So take it in small doses, take it in small steps that you can manage. Perhaps set a timer for 1 minute. That often is helpful. You'll notice that you feel freedom from that even in 1 minute. So don't discount how powerful this one step can be. Sometimes it might be helpful if you do this acknowledgement of your feelings with a friend. Now, this needs to be somebody you trust that is not going to try to fix you. This isn't fix it and solve it. This is letting you vent. And it needs to be a friend that understands you just need to vent. If you don't have such a friend, or talking to somebody about it doesn't feel good, you could journal. That often is so helpful. To write it all down can really, really help you be clear about what you're really feeling. Now, sometimes I can remember times in the past when I have felt so mad and so outraged that I just had to scream it out loud. So I used a pillow, and it's very effective. Just scream into a pillow. Scream all those things you want to say to the other person into the pillow. Nobody's going to hear you because you're screaming into a pillow. So bury your head, on your bed, on the pillow, and scream it all out. So there's lots of ways in which you can be authentic with yourself and own your feelings. And I will share with you that a lot of people are afraid that they will open the floodgates of the feelings and that they won't be able to close them. I will say that that's not true, particularly when you set yourself a timer and you just say, I know I'm going to be repeating this process. I'm not going to be one and done. And you just say, I'm going to feel what I feel in this 1 minute. And then you are going to say, that's good enough for today. So you will not have to get overwhelmed. You take this at the pace that you can take it. But it is essential that you are authentic with yourself and that you really know and identify the feelings that you have, the hurt, the betrayal, the sadness, the grief, the outrage, all the feelings that you have. Now, step 2, you're going to ask yourself, who am I and who am I not? Now, this is essential because your outrage at having been hurt is because something you value has been violated. You have values that have been stomped all over. And what are those values? Who are you and who are you not? So this is the part where you get to own yourself, know yourself, and own yourself. It's a very powerful part of the process. So for example, with my friend that I thought was a friend, and really she was just a colleague that did things her way, I value that I am a friend that my friends can trust and rely upon to look out for them. And to put their interests right up there with mine. I think about them in our friendship. I don't stomp all over them. So I value that. I value being a friend that's honest, that has integrity, and that's looking out for the people that I care for. Well, I want that in return. I want that kind of friend. So that's me. I identified my value to be an honest, caring friend that really thinks about the other person before I take action, and I am supporting my friend. And I am recognizing, as I own that inside myself, I am recognizing that this person that I thought was a friend is not that. So we are different. And this is really important because when you own who you are, you can then say, we are different. I am not that person. I am different from them. So just own that statement. I am different from them. As you own who you are, you then are living from the inside out. You are embodying, owning, and living who you are. So for example, let's look at if the abuse that you suffered, say this is when we were discussing perhaps having suffered emotional abuse or physical abuse from your family members or friends or somebody you know. Will you value being safe? You value feeling safe and protected and being able to live in safety and not being violated and not feeling vulnerable? It's a value of yours that you want that for yourself and you want that for your loved ones. You want to provide that for your loved ones. You think your loved ones should provide that for you too. So it's a value of yours to be safe, not feel vulnerable around your family and friends. And you want to provide that to them as well. So own who you are. Own your values. Who are you? And who are you not? You are different from your family member or your friend or who abused you that you know. You're different from them. You don't have the same values. You see things differently. You're just different. There's very big freedom in that word that you are just different. So own yourself and who you are. When I had the example of being disappointed in myself for failing to be the best parent that I could be for my son. Well, my value was in being a loving, helpful parent to my son. That's my value. I still want to be a loving, helpful parent to my son. And that is a commitment that I have renewed for myself. Now, if, for example, you have done something and it's affected somebody in your family and you disappointed, and perhaps maybe you've made a money decision and you have to do some self-forgiveness because this money decision has caused difficulties for you or people in your family. And you think, okay, well, you're going to have to go back and do step 1, which is to feel your feelings about that. And then in step 2, who are you and who are you not? Well, if you have spent money unwisely and that has caused some harm for yourself or for your family members, you can say, well, yes, I did that. And that is not what I truly value. And that is not who I am. I did do that. And my value truly is in being responsible with money in order to be able to take good care of myself and my family. So there's your value. Own it. And then who are you not? You can say, well, I, in the past, was not being responsible for money, and that is not who I want to be in the future. So own that too. Who are you and who are you not? So you're going to be different in the future. We're going to get to that here in step 3. Now, again, please remember to do all 3 steps. And remember, you're going to be doing these as needed over time. It's not a one and done process. So step 3 is the question, what are you going to do differently in the future? Your power is going to be in owning yourself, knowing yourself, loving yourself, and taking care of yourself differently in the future so that you do not suffer the same thing that you suffered. Either somebody did it by accident, somebody did it on purpose, you did it out of lack of awareness. Whatever it is, you are going to be doing something differently, and you have the power to do something differently. So what are you going to be doing differently that is taking care of yourself and loving yourself? So in my decision about what I'm going to do with the business colleague who used to be a friend, I am now, at the time I remember as I worked through that process, eyes wide open. I now see her for who she is and what she tends to do. And I then made a commitment to myself to be better prepared and to plan ahead so that I was not as vulnerable to her sabotage. So I would set things up where I did my best to have projects that didn't involve her or didn't have to be in her purview. Now, I wasn't always successful, but I certainly did much better. And I felt like I was protecting myself because I was being aware and I was planning and I wasn't deceiving myself that she was just going to be different in the future and then get my feelings hurt all over again. So I was just being honest with we are different. She's who she is and I'm who I am. So I just made steps to protect myself and do things differently that would leave me less vulnerable with her in the future. It could be that in the abuse, if you are in a situation where you've been emotionally abused by somebody you know and you come in contact regularly, and you say, well, geez, what do I do with that? How do I protect myself from that? Well, you could look inside and you can say, I'm not safe with that person, emotionally safe. They're not safe. I'm not safe with them. So you need to set up some protection for yourself. Perhaps you make a commitment to yourself to not volunteer any of your emotions that could get trampled upon. You agree with yourself. You will talk about other topics with this person, but you will not talk about your emotions that could get trampled on as they have in the past. You might be able to ask if when they come forward anyway and say things that are hurtful to you and abusive to you, as they have in the past, you might say, please don't bring up that topic or say those things to me. It really is not, it feels hurtful and I really don't want that anymore between us. Now, it might not go that way. You could ask for that and it might not go that way. In which case then, what are you going to do differently in the future? Maybe you just decrease the amount of time and contact you have with that person. Just because they're family or friends doesn't mean you have to spend the same amount of time you always have in the past. You can take care of yourself, protect yourself, and keep yourself emotionally safe. The same thing for physical safety. If you've been abused and physically violated and you are not safe and you are vulnerable with somebody that you know or in a situation, you need to be very clear about how to protect yourself and be safe with yourself or protect your loved one. So you are going to be doing those things differently in the future. You're going to make a plan and you're going to identify how you're going to do them differently in the future. You are not going to be doing that from a place of walling off your emotions and just saying, I'm done with that topic and putting it out of your mind. That does not ease your suffering. What eases your suffering is to go all the way through the steps and to do all three of them, which means that you're going to really feel the feelings that you have. You are going to identify the values of yours and how you want to be and how you want to live. And you're going to identify what you want to do differently. So when I had the question about what am I going to do differently related to my son and my disappointment in myself for not having been the parent that I wished I would have been in that area of our lives, I made a commitment to myself that I am now going to be very aware and present to what's going on with him. And I made a commitment to myself that I am including in my quiet time every day the question, how can I be the best parent to my son today? What does he need from me today? What do I need to notice? What do I need to be aware of? What do I need to respond to? And how can I be the best parent, most helpful parent to him that I can be? So it was a renewed commitment to this process where I am being a loving, powerful parent for my son. That in and of itself is freeing. So you will notice, I want you to notice several things. That as you do these three steps, and then I'm going to repeat the three steps, as you do these three steps, which is one, feel your feelings, identify them and feel them. And number two, you're going to ask yourself the question, who am I and who am I not? You're going to identify who you are, your values, and who you are and how you want to be living from the inside out. And number three, what are you going to be doing differently in the future to take care of yourself or your loved one that has been hurt as a result of whatever has happened? Now, as you do these three steps, you're going to notice that you need to repeat them when you have memories that come forward or thoughts or feelings that get triggered again of what happened. You will notice you do not have to repeat all of them. You have already experienced freedom. So each time you do it, you have let go of a piece of it. So know that that letting go and that release and the ease of your suffering is happening each time you ask yourself to do these steps and you allow yourself the power and the freedom and the happiness that comes from working these steps. So that is some very powerful knowing within yourself. You will also notice that it's very interesting that the word forgiveness no longer really applies. That when you have memories that come forth, feelings and thoughts that come forth that result from the hurt that was brought into your world, that was caused by somebody else, or that you have done something that you wish you hadn't done. That the word forgiveness is no longer pertinent because you will find that what that is an invitation to go inside. It's an invitation for you to really know yourself, own your feelings, love yourself by being able to ease your own suffering and create how you're going to do things differently in the future so that you are safe and you're more protected and you are creating safety for yourself and your loved ones. Now, that's a very powerful place to be. So I am asking you to take the invitation to live a more powerful life and a happier life by shifting your emotions and shifting them to looking inside and really living your authentic, powerful self from the inside out. That's all for today's Wavemaker podcast. Thank you for listening. I have so much more to share with you, so be sure to tune in next month. And remember, go to my website, www.melaniedean.com, and join our free Wavemaker community, where you will receive even more science-backed advice for unlocking your emotional power.